Just as a quick review, we're going to run through and graph this quadratic function. It's in that vertex form. So just as a reminder, the square tells us it's a parabola. The -2 is with the x, so it moves it horizontally, left and right. -2 is going to move it right 2, and the +3 is going to move it up 3. Start by locating the vertex. We're going to go right 2 and up 3, and my vertex is going to be right there. Then we look at a, the number out in front. In this case, there's nothing there, so it's a 1. So we're going to go over 1, up 1 on either side. If you want to do 2 more points, you can go over 2 and up 4. Okay, and that is what my graph looks like. So that's what we worked on last week, right? Just going through and graphing these that are in vertex form. What we're going to look at today is sometimes these functions are not in vertex form. So if they're not in vertex form, we have to approach it a little bit different way. So you don't need to write this down, but I just want you to watch. I'm going to take this and change the form. So y equals, I'm going to multiply out this x minus 2 squared. So remember, x minus 2 squared is x minus 2 times x minus 2. So if I multiply that out, I end up with x squared minus 2x minus 2x plus 4, and I still have that plus 3. Combine your like terms, we end up with y equals x squared minus 4x plus 7. So this equation, this function, and this original function up here, they're the same thing. One of them, though, is in what we call vertex form, this top one. The reason why we call it vertex form is because I can just look at it, and using transformations, I can figure out where the vertex is, right? I'm going to go right 2, up 3. This one, however, is in standard form. And this standard form, even though it's the same equation, it looks different. We can't just tell where the vertex is by looking at it. So today we're going to go through how do I graph it if it's given in this form, standard form, rather than vertex form. So make sure you add this to your notes. We have these two different forms. We know if it's in vertex form, right, the h moves it left and right. So it's the x-coordinate of the vertex. The k moves it up or down. So it's the y-coordinate of the vertex. That's why we call it vertex form, is because it's really easy to find the vertex. The a, just as a quick reminder, a controls how steep the graph is. Remember, if it gets bigger, it makes it steeper. It's a vertical stretch. If it gets smaller, it makes it less steep. And it also controls whether it opens up or down. So if it's a is positive, the graph's open up. If a is negative, it reflects the graph down. Okay, so that's vertex form. We've done a bunch of those. We're all really good at that. If it's not in vertex form, instead of it's in standard form, we have to approach it a little bit different. So here's a formula, and this is new, so make sure you have this down. If you want to find the vertex, we start by taking b, which is the number in front of the x, and we do the opposite of b, so negative b over. Then I take a, the number in front of the x squared, and I have to times it by 2. If I do that, that gives me the x-coordinate of the vertex. And then to find the y-coordinate, we take what we got for x, and we plug it in. We plug in x, and that tells us what the y-coordinate is. Okay, so I'll show you what this looks like here in these next examples. So this is really important, guys. Make sure you have this formula. We're going to use it over and over again on these examples and also on your assignment. So make sure you have that written down. Before we do that, though, the very first thing we have to do is if you're given an equation, we have to decide, is it vertex form or is it standard form? If it's in vertex form, it's going to have x plus or minus something squared. If it's in standard form, it's going to be ax squared plus bx plus c. It's going to look like that. Those could be minuses also. Okay, so if you look through this first one is in standard form. So that's all we're doing on this one. We're not finding the vertex. We're not graphing it. We're just saying, is it standard form or vertex form? Okay, this one's got the x plus 3 in parentheses. This one is vertex form. You guys take just a second. So pause the video, take just a second and do 3 through 8. And all you're putting down is just, is it standard form or vertex form? And then come back and we'll check it together. So 3 should be vertex form. 4, I got the x squared minus 4x minus 10. That's standard form. Vertex form, standard form, vertex form. So make sure before you start graphing a quadratic, by the way, if you notice on all those, the x is squared. That's what makes it a quadratic. It makes it a parabola. But the first thing you're going to do is decide is it standard form or vertex form before you try graphing it. Okay, so we're good with vertex form. We're going to focus on standard form. So if you look at this graph, I want to find the vertex and I want to draw a sketch of it. So this is in standard form. So as soon as you see standard form, we ought to be thinking of our formula, negative b over 2a. So make sure you start out by deciding what a and b are. A is whatever's in front of the x squared, so a is 1. B is whatever's in front of the x, so b is a negative 4. So we're going to plug these into our formula. We get a negative b. B is already a negative 4. That flips the sign. Be careful with that. It makes it a positive 4. Then on the bottom I have 2 times a. A is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. So the x-coordinate of my vertex is 4 divided by 2, which comes out to be 2. Okay, so I've got the x-coordinate. And now to find the y-coordinate, the vertex, I just take the 2 and I plug it back in my equation. So I'm going to go y equals 2 squared minus 4 times 2 plus 3. And you can work that out by hand, or you can plug the whole thing in the calculator just to find out what the y is. So 2 squared is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, so I have 4 minus 8 is negative 4 plus 3. I think we end up with negative 1. But again, you can plug that whole thing, this whole thing in the calculator, just as it is, and you'll get that same, you should get that same answer. Okay, so let's go to our vertex. The vertex is at 2, negative 1, which is right there. We look at this number. Let's go back. I think I forgot to write that down on our notes. Notice A right here tells you how steep it is and if it's opening up and down. This A does the same thing. So I don't know if you want to draw an arrow over to there. Okay, it does the exact, maybe draw it all the way up to there. It does the exact same thing. So if I go back to that problem we were just doing, if I want to decide if it's opening up or down, I look at A, the number in front. So it's a positive 1. So I'm going to go over 1, up 1, just like we did when we graphed in vertex form. And left 1 and up 1, draw my parabola. Okay. It looks something like that. Okay, so find the vertex using the formula. Then you can use A, the number in front, to work through and find that. Let's do a couple more to make sure we have this down. Let's see. I'm going to skip past that one. Let's try this one right here. So I want to find the vertex and graph this. I have y equals a negative x squared plus 8x minus 13. So recognize that it's in standard form, and make sure you have your formula. Okay, decide what a and b are. So a is whatever's in front of there, which is a negative 1. So a is a negative 1, and then b is whatever's in front of the x. So there's our a and there's our b. Okay, plug them in. So I get b is a positive 8, so the negative flips the sign, so negative 8 divided by 2 times, and a is a negative 1. 2 times negative 1 is a negative 2. Okay, when I divide two negatives, it comes out to be a positive, so my x-coordinate comes out to be 4. Okay, go back up, and now I've got to plug that 4. Whoops, sorry about that. I've got to plug that 4 into my equation. So it's going to be y equals a negative 4 squared plus 8 times 4 minus 13. And you can either use a calculator to work that out, or you can plug that whole thing in your calculator, or you can do it by hand. Let's see, 4 squared is 16, negative 16 plus 32 is a positive 16, minus 13 is a positive 3, I believe. So 4, 3 is where my vertex is. So I go to 4, 3, put my vertex, and then I look up here at A. A is a negative 1. Well, remember, A controls what direction you're opening, so a negative is going to reflect it down. And the 1 means I'm going to go over 1, down 1, over 1, down 1. So my parabola looks something like that when I graph it. Let's try one more. We'll do one that's kind of tricky. Let's do one that has a fraction in it. Oh, look, it's already worked out. Let me just delete that. There we go. Okay. So we want to find out, again, where the vertex is, and we want to draw a sketch of this one. Okay, so it's in standard form. That means I'm going to use my formula. B is a positive 2. That means it becomes a negative 2. And I have 2 times A. A is a negative 1/2. So I have to go 2 times a negative 1/2. Well, a positive and a negative make it a negative. And 2 times a half, you can plug that in a calculator, work it out, but it comes out to be 1. So the x-coordinate of the vertex is a positive 2, right? Negative 2 divided by negative 1 is a positive 2. Okay, then I have to plug 2 back into my equation and find out what it comes out to. So I've got y equals negative 1/2 times 2 squared plus 2 times 2 minus 3. And again, you can use a calculator, or you can do it by hand. This one's a little trickier by hand, but 2 squared would be 4, times a negative 1/2 would be a negative 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So I think you end up with negative 1 when you do all that. Again, feel free to use a calculator on that. Okay, so I go to 2, negative 1. So over 2, down 1, there's my vertex. Hey, a negative 1/2. So remember, normally it's going to make it go down because it's negative. And normally I go over 1 and down 1. I'm going to go over 1 and down 1/2. And over 1 and down 1/2. So it's going to make it less steep. Call this a vertical compression, like you're taking it and smashing it vertically. Okay, my graph ought to look something like that. So again, we're just, same thing as before, we're trying to find the vertex or trying to draw a sketch. The difference is, if it's not in vertex form, you can't just look at it and find the vertex. You actually need to use this formula to find it. Things to be careful with, that negative b, that flips the sign. So if it's a positive 2, it'll become a negative 2. If it were already a minus 2 or a negative 2, then it would become a positive 2. The other thing is, don't forget to times whatever a is by 2 on the bottom. Those are 2 common errors that I see there. If you are using a calculator, if you end up plugging in a negative into your equation up here, make sure you put it in parentheses. You can always use parentheses, but with a negative, it's really important. Okay, it's got to be in parentheses, or the calculator is going to give you a wrong answer. Okay, give those a try, and then just let me know if you have questions, and I will help you with those. Thanks, guys.